If you've ever tried to build a house in Minecraft, you might know that it's a very time-consuming process. So I want to show you an example of how we can take advantage of Minecraft's coding program to make it much more efficient and also meet some New York State computer science and digital fluency standards. Specifically, I want to look at a computational thinking standard under abstraction and decomposition, where we write a program using functions or procedures whose names or other documentation convey their purpose within the larger task. So we're going to create a function called floor that lets us recreate the same floor of a building and build a full building with floors that have details in a matter of seconds rather than a matter of hours. So if we jump over to Minecraft, you'll see an example of a building that I made. It didn't take very long because I coded it to stack upon itself, and it kind of looks like an office building or a skyscraper almost. So if I were to build this by hand, block by block, this would take hours. But because I've put together some efficient coding that I can run, I can build this in a matter of seconds, and I'll show you how that would work. So the way I have my code set up is that when I type the chat command office and include a few important numbers, specifically the width of my floor, the height of each floor, and the number of floors I want stacked on top of each other, and hit enter, it will run my code and build all of that information into tangible blocks in a matter of seconds. So now I have a brand new building, and I could easily build a whole city this way in one session rather than spending a large chunk of time on it. Okay, so let's look at the code that was used to put this building together. Bring up my coding platform here and zoom out. So let's start with the chat command. You'll see that I have a few blocks here. We're going to look at this guy specifically. So I have a block that starts with on chat command, and I typed in the word office, just kind of the name I gave it. And then I have three variables that I get to plug in. So whatever number I plug into each variable, that number gets transported to each place I put that variable in these red bubbles. So in this example, on the chat command office, I plugged in 10, 10, and 4. So there's 4 floors. That means that because I have the variable plugged in right here, it's going to repeat 4 times. If I had said 5, it would repeat 5 times, and so on. And what it's doing 5 times or 4 times or whatever is it's calling a function that I've created. And I created the function and named it floor. So it's, again, pulling those numbers, the width and the height. This is telling me that the floor function that I created is going to use the 10 and 10 wherever I plugged it in the function. And then because I want the floors to stack on top of each other, I actually have to teleport myself to the top of the floor each time I repeat it. And that is because the way the floor function is set up, the blocks will generate around me. So whatever coordinates I have relative to my location. And so if I had stayed in the same place every time I created a new floor, it would just create the same floor in the same place repeatedly. But since I teleport on top of the first floor, then I can generate a floor there and keep going up and up until it looks like a skyscraper. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the function that I created that I called floor. All right, so here's my floor function. And I'm essentially taking those numbers that I typed in, the 10 wide, 10 high, and I'm plugging them into my coordinates here. So I used a block called fill with. And what fill with does is it lets you choose the type of material you want, and it creates a box around you essentially. You choose the coordinates. So in this case, I wanted whatever width I chose times -1 because I want it to start behind me. So in this case, I said 10, so 10 times -1 was 10 spaces behind me. The height was 0. I wanted it to start where I was standing. And then -10 again, right? 10 times -1. So my starting coordinate is 10 back, 10 to the side, and the same height that I was standing at. And then the second coordinate was width times height times width, or 10 by 10 by 10. So one coordinate was kind of back and to the side, the other coordinate was above me and to the other side, and then it went up the number of blocks that I chose, which was 10. I also designated it as a hollow box. So instead of just being one solid square or cube, it hollowed it out so that it could function like an actual room. Once I had created the room, I used that fill with block a bunch more times to start adding details. So I added a window using glass panes, and then I added another window and another window and another window. So I had windows all the way around my floor. After that, I started adding bookshelves, a light fixture, and then carpeting. So all of these fill with commands used my location and built the blocks around my location. That's what this relative to my location things mean.